The tow truck's amber strobes licked the stucco walls while a deputy tapped my shoulder. By the time Dad shuffled to the porch in slippers, the winch had our RV tilted like a beached whale. The tow truck's amber strobes lick the stucco like a slow fire alarm, and a deputy taps my shoulder with two knuckles. Sir Dad shuffles onto the porch in his slippers robe, crooked hair flattened on one side. By the time he says, "What's going on?" the winch has our RV tilted at a sick angle, the white fiberglass catching the light like a beached whale. "Hold up," I say, stepping off the last stair. "Who authorized this?" The tow driver keeps his eyes on the cable. "Work order from the association." "Association." Dad's voice cracks. It's my driveway. A woman in a plush robe and slippers appears at the edge of the cul-de-sac, glow clipboard tucked under her arm like a scepter. "Good evening," she says, not sounding like it. "Karen Whitfield, HOA president. You're in violation of what I ask." She flips a plastic sleeve and produces a sheet with a fluorescent sticky note. "Notice of violation overnight parking." She taps the sticky. Time-stamped 11:58 p.m. It's 12:11. I say, checking the cul-de-sac clock by the mailbox. "You posted at midnight and called a tow at midnight. Community standards are clear," Karen says. "No recreational vehicles overnight. We protect values here." Dad reaches for my sleeve. "That rig is my summer Colton." I know. I lift my phone. The camera shutter clacks in the quiet. I take the notice, the timestamp, the curb line, the license plate on the tow truck, the position of the hitch relative to the crack in the driveway. Breath fogs my screen. The desert air is thin and cold and smells faintly of creosote. The deputy clears his throat. "Sir, this is a civil matter between the homeowner and the HOA. We're just here to keep the peace." "So, keep it," Dad says. "Tell them to drop my house off my house." "It's not a house," Karen says, chin high. "It's an eyesore." I turn to her. "Authorization, please." "Board vote, meeting minutes, anything besides a neon sticky at midnight." "The board empowered me to act," she says. When I ask, "Last quarter's meeting, show me the minutes," I say. "They're on the website," she says, "in the morning." The winch whines. The RV lurches rubber sighing off concrete. The tow driver slides a strap through the frame with a practiced flick, the nylon rasping like sandpaper. "Stop," Dad says. "You scratch her and—" "And what?" Karen's smile is small and tight. "You'll complain on next door, ma'am," the deputy says, not unkindly. "Let's keep it respectful." "Respectful would be a knock at a reasonable hour," I say, raising the phone again. "Respectful would be a warning older than 13 minutes. She points at a paragraph highlighted in yellow. Bylaws, Section 5.3. No overnight parking of recreational vehicles. It's simple. We enforce uniformly. Including against a 78-year-old who pulled in after a cardiology appointment, I ask. "Uniformly," she repeats. Dad's hand trembles against my arm. "I paid for the spot under that palm tree when we moved in," he murmurs. "They didn't say a word for 20 years. I angle the camera to catch the cul-de-sac clock again. "Question," I say. "If posting was 11:58 p.m., when did the tow request go out?" 12:01, Karen says, not missing a beat. "So you waited 3 minutes," I say. "That's due process here." "It's timely process," she says. The tow driver holds out a carbon form on a metal board. "If you want the receipt," he says. "Eyes still on the cable sign here for your copy." I sign, "Received" in small neat letters, and take the pink sheet. "Company name," I say, "and yard address." He taps the header with a grease-dark finger. "There. Thanks." The deputy shifts his weight. "If you gentlemen want to contest this, you can do so with the association administratively or in court. Tonight, they've produced a notice. I can't stop a civil tow." "Of course you can't." Karen says, already writing. "I'll email the invoice in the morning." "Send it now," I say. "Let's keep everything time-stamped." Her pen pauses. "Tomorrow is business hours. Tonight is when you acted," I say. Her eyes flick to my phone, to the tiny red light of the camera app. "Fine," she says. "You'll get something." The cable sings again, higher pitch like a string being tightened just past comfortable. The RV's nose rises. Taillights blink once as the battery cable jiggles. I frame Dad in the foreground, the rig in the background, the tow operator a silhouette. The porch light throws our shadows long and bent. "Colton," Dad whispers, "don't make this worse." "I'm documenting," I say softly. "That's how we live now." He exhales, thin and ragged, and I tuck him closer to my shoulder. Across the kitchen window, I can see the fridge, and on the freezer door, the blue magnet with Aunt Margaret's courthouse seal. I think about the last time we visited her courtroom, about the way she listened more than she spoke. I think about calling her now. I'm not ready. Not yet. Karen steps closer, breath perfumed and sharp. We have standards, she says under her breath. People pay to live where standards mean something. Me too, I say. I pay to live where neighbors knock. She ignores that. Your father's rig is visible from 3 homes, she says. It drags values. The values that matter to me are inside, I say. But you knew that. The deputy lifts a hand toward the tow driver. We good. Hook's clear, the driver says. Rolling. Last chance, I say. Hold it here, we talk like people in the morning. Karen straightens the clipboard. We are people, she says. We just happen to be organized. Minnie, Cliff. The steel cable tightens, and in the slack, second before motion, everything is too quiet. The desert, the cul-de-sac, the sound of Dad's breathing. Then, rubber kisses asphalt, and the rig crosses the imaginary line where the driveway becomes the street. That's my life, Dad says, not loudly, not theatrically, just like someone naming a thing he is losing. I keep filming. Streetlight glare strobes across the RV's windows as it eases forward, the ladder glinting, the little dent on the rear bumper catching the amber light like a wink I don't feel like returning. I step back onto the porch and shoot the porch number, the mailbox, the tow company logo. My fingers have gone numb, and when I switch hands the phone trembles not from fear, exactly, but from the anger that turns into focus when there's nothing else to do. The deputy nods to me as the truck idles. Sir? Thanks for staying calm, I say. He shrugs. You'll want to keep everything he says. Emails, photos, times. I'm an auditor, I say. Keeping everything is my only hobby. Karen snorts. Then you'll enjoy the itemized administrative fee, she says. The board takes misuse seriously. What misuse Dad asks is parking your own car at your own house to sleep in your own bed. It's not a car, she says. It's a recreational vehicle. Definitions matter. They will. I say. The tow driver climbs into the cab. Amber light washes the block as the hydraulic arm lifts and the truck pulls away, diesel clatter rolling over the gravel like surf in a place without water. I lower the phone. Dad leans heavier against me, the heat from his shoulder bleeding through my flannel. Come inside, I tell him. He looks past me down the street where the taillights get small. Overnight, he says, voice thin. We've lived here 20 years. We're going to be fine, I say, though I don't know what that looks like yet. The porch light buzzes. Somewhere past the gate, there's a faint electronic beep as another car enters the subdivision. Like this is all normal, like the rules are little fences you hop without thinking. Inside, I set the receipt on the counter and flatten the corners. I line up the notice with the sticky note and take one last photo beside the kitchen clock. The fridge hums. The courthouse magnet is cold under my thumb. At dawn, my phone vibrates on the granite. An email slides into focus. Balance due, $1,200 towing, plus administrative fee. The subject line ends with a neat little word that tries to sound polite and lands like a threat, immediate. The subject line is chirpy enough to be smug. Let's protect our property values. Eyesore enforcement has begun. Karen has CC'd the board and BCC'd the block, judging by how fast my phone lights up with replies. I skim on the couch while Dad sits across from me at the dining table, his reading glasses folded on the placemat like a truce flag we never agreed to. She went with eyesore? Huh, I say. Dad lifts a shoulder. Could have been public menace. That one's got more flair. Careful, I say. She'll add it to the minutes. He tries a smile and misses. The living room has turned into a document pit overnight, banker boxes on the rug, yellow tabs colonizing everything I've printed. The winter light in Phoenix is thin like it's been filtered through chalk. On the TV, the HOA portal login page sits open. Login failed twice because the password reset link is older than the internet. Temporary guest vehicle, I mutter. Dad blinks. What? At the block party last spring, I say. Somebody mentioned the rules had an exception. I flagged it and then, life. I click through the architectural guidelines addendum. There it is, in black and PDF, temporary guest vehicle, no definition attached. It's a ghost clause. My pen taps the table. If it isn't defined, it isn't enforceable the way they want. English, please, Dad says. It means words matter, I say. And I'm not paying $200 to teach them that. He picks up his glasses and sets them down again. Make it an even 1,000, and we call it a senior discount. We'll call it 0, I say. The clubhouse smells like floor cleaner and burned coffee. Fluorescent lights buzz like nervous bees. Rows of metal folding chairs scrape and clatter as neighbors file in whispering into sleeves. A poster board on an easel reads Community Standards Night in bubble letters that would be cute if they weren't loaded. Karen stands at the front with a binder and a clicker. "Good evening," she says into a microphone that pops on P's. Before we begin, a reminder, this is a meeting of the association. Civility is expected. A polite cough rises and falls. I take a seat 2 rows back where I can see the projector screen and Karen's hands. Dad sits on my right posture, stiff hat in his lap like contrition. "We'll start with Bylaw Section 5.3, Karen announces. The slide snaps forward. No overnight parking of recreational vehicles. The words are centered and large enough to shame a billboard. Uniform enforcement, she says. No exceptions. I raise my hand. Point of order, I say, because auditors don't come to meetings without a script. The Architectural Guidelines Addendum references a temporary guest vehicle exception. There's no definition. Could you explain how you're interpreting that? A few heads turn. One neighbor, Mark, from 3 doors down, gives me the quick half nod that says I'm not alone. Karen's smile is thin. The board has consistently interpreted temporary guest vehicle to mean a passenger car belonging to a visiting guest. So, not vehicle, then I say, a subset of vehicles. It's common sense, she says. Common sense isn't common law, I say. If you mean passenger car, why doesn't it say passenger car? Her jaw tightens. She clicks to a slide full of bullet points, eyesore enforcement protecting values. Terminology aside, the community expects clean lines and no clutter. Recreational vehicles present a cluttered aesthetic. Aesthetic, Dad says under his breath. That rig's cleaner than my driveway. Karen continues. We have a duty to protect the visual harmony of the block. A question Mark says from the aisle. If a guest stays the weekend, is their truck a temporary guest vehicle or an eyesore? Karen draws herself up. Trucks are evaluated case by case. So is a 78-year-old coming home late from the doctor a case I ask? Because what happened didn't look like evaluation. It looked like a stopwatch. We posted a notice of violation at 11:58 p.m., Karen says, and called it 12:01. Timely as the bylaws allow. Do the bylaws allow 3 minutes, I ask? As in, does any homeowner think 3 minutes is a fair warning? We're not here to debate feelings, Karen says. We're here to uphold standards. A man 2 rows up whispers, Standards for who? His spouse shushes him. Next slide, Karen says, and a photo of our cul-de-sac fills the screen. Our driveway, empty, the palm tree. Still wind chimes blurring. This is what neighbors woke up to. Clean. Peaceful. Because you removed the thing you didn't like, I say. It's peaceful after a theft, too. Language, she warns. Fine, I say. After an aggressive tow. She picks up a sheet from the lectern with dramatic neatness. Mr. Avery, she says, addressing Dad per association policy, here is your invoice towing plus administrative fee. Please remit within 10 days to avoid late penalties. Dad takes the paper like it might crack. The corners crease under his thumbs. His eyes find the total and stop there. His breath goes high and thin. Read it out, he says softly to me. 1,200, I say. Plus 50 if not paid within 10 days. He folds along the total, then along it again like he can make the number smaller by making the paper neat. I lift a hand again. One more point. The addendum clause, temporary guest vehicle, has no definition. In contract interpretation, ambiguity is read in favor of the less powerful party, the homeowner. If you intend to exclude RVs, then your language needs to say so. Karen's microphone pops. This is not a courtroom. No, I say, it's a neighborhood. She leans toward the mic. Your RV, she says, and the word travels across the tile is junkyard flare. A sharp breath pulls in from somewhere behind us. Mark winces. I feel my phone already in my hand before I decide to lift it. The memo app opens. I press record. Karen's eyes flick to my screen and away again as if I'm a gnat. A woman in the front row raises a tentative hand. We bring our son's camper on holidays, she says. 2 nights max. Is that an eyesore case by case? Karen says. But campers are not passenger cars, so they are not temporary guest vehicles. Then, what I ask is a temporary guest vehicle, use your judgment, she says. That's what we did, I say. The fluorescent lights hum louder, or maybe my head does. The microphone cord makes a little click against the lectern wood as Karen shifts. The room's temperature is the same as outside, but feels dry or brittle. Someone scribbles in ballpoint. The pen scratch sounds like a match on a rough strip. Karen scans the room for a sympathetic face and finds a few. "We'll move to board updates," she says. "Enforcement is not personal." Dad tips his hat forward a millimeter. "Feels personal," he whispers. I put my hand on the top of his hat and push it back enough that I can see his eyes. "We're fine," I say. "You keep saying that," he mutters. "And I will," I say. Mini Cliff. Karen brings the meeting down with a practiced slap of paper on wood. "We're adjourned," she says, and the sentence empties the air as efficiently as the tow emptied our driveway. Neighbors stand with chair-scrape applause, some looking at us, some pointedly not. In the shuffle, Mark touches my elbow and leans in. "Temporary guest," he says low. "When my brother visited, they didn't say a word." "Did you park overnight?" I ask. He nods. "2 nights. No notice." "Thank you," I say. "Would you be willing to write a statement?" He hesitates, then shrugs. "I'll think about it." Karen passes us without looking. The microphone gives one last pop as someone kills the power. The coffee urn exhales its burnt last breath. Back home, I clear a corner of the wall above the desk and pin a piece of foam board cheap cork imitation. At the top, in block letters, "Ambiguities that save us." I print the architectural guidelines addendum and draw a fat red circle around the ghost words "temporary guest vehicle." Dad stands at my shoulder, the invoice tucked folded twice now in his shirt pocket like a talisman that burns. "What do we do?" he asks. "We let their words help us," I say. I push a bright pin through the circle. It bites the cork with a satisfying resistance. And we don't pay for the privilege. The grill hisses when I drop another burger patty onto the grate smoke, curling over the block wall like gossip that refuses to stay contained. Dad hums along with the radio softer than last week, his shoulders a shade lighter. And then she steps through the side gate lemon bars balanced on a glass plate, her eyes scanning the backyard as if she's already weighing testimony. "Aunt Margaret," I say, wiping my hands on a towel. "Welcome to the scene of the crime." She sets the plate down on the picnic table. "You make it sound dramatic," she says with a smile that lands closer to steel than sugar. "I prefer to call it an inspection." Dad chuckles nerves under the laugh. "Inspection comes with fees." "Only if you fail," she says, pulling out a chair. The cousins tumble in behind her teenagers with appetites and earbuds. They flop onto lawn chairs, mock arguing about ketchup ratios. Comic relief loud enough to buy us a little privacy. I pour iced tea into plastic cups, the lemon slices drifting like lifeboats. "You mentioned something last Christmas," I say to her. Definition by omission. Her eyes sharpen. A zoning case. The city banned structures over 6 feet but didn't define whether antennas counted. Court said ambiguity goes to the citizen. My spine straightens like a ruler. Dad catches the change and sits up taller, too. We spread the paperwork across the picnic table, the wood grain hidden under deed copies and HOA bylaws. A string of bulbs hums overhead, drawing desert moths that beat themselves against the glass. Margaret uncaps a purple pen. First, she says aligning pages like exhibits the covenant against overnight RV parking section 5.3. She underlines the phrase with neat surgical strokes. "Got it," I say. Second, she continues sliding over the architectural guidelines addendum. Mentions temporary guest vehicle. No definition provided. Dad leans in. "That's our golden ticket. Potentially," she says. "But don't get cocky. Judges hate cocky." She flips to another sheet. Third, the meeting minutes. I shuffle the photocopies toward her. She scans. No recorded vote authorizing immediate tows. She circles a blank space with the purple pen. That absence is a procedural gap big enough to drive a Class C through. Dad grins for the first time in weeks. That's the rig, he says. Class C. Margaret sets down the pen and looks directly at me. Document everything. Photos, emails, timestamps, witness statements. Courts favor evidence, not anecdotes. I nod. Already started. Good, she says. Because Karen will twist anecdotes into policy. The cousins wander back for dessert. Margaret slices lemon bars into squares, dusting powdered sugar like snow across the table of legalese. Between bites, she guides me through assembly. Binder, she instructs. Tab 1, notices. Tab 2, receipts. Tab 3, photos. Tab 4, correspondence. I slide plastic sleeves into place. The tow, receipt, the midnight timestamp, the invoice with penalties all snapped into order. Mark's tentative neighbor statement goes under tab 5. The corkboard at home has been living evidence. Now it's becoming trial evidence. Dad watches, eyes moist in the glow of string lights. Feels official, he says. It is, Margaret replies. This is how you balance power paper against power. She taps the ambiguous line again, temporary guest vehicle. If it's undefined, she says slowly, then the narrowest reasonable reading favors the homeowner. I breathe out. That's not just opinion, it's precedent, she says. Mini, Cliff, the word tastes different on my tongue. Precedent. Like leverage I didn't know I had. We're clearing plates when my phone buzzes on the picnic table. A new email subject slices the twilight. Non-payment may result in foreclosure proceedings. From Karen. Dad goes pale. Foreclosure. I steady the phone in my hand, the screen light cold against my thumb. Lean, threat I say, showing Margaret. She doesn't flinch. Expected escalation, she says. They bluff high to scare you low. Dad's breath shudders. She's threatening to take the house. She's threatening, Margaret repeats firm, because she knows you're pressing the right nerve. The cousins go quiet, picking at crumbs, sensing the shift. The string lights flicker once the hum, louder for a second. We keep building the binder, I say more to myself than anyone else. We don't fold. Margaret nods. Exactly. You hold the line. You let their words undo themselves. Dad leans back, staring at the desert sky where quail click through gravel like tiny judges moving unseen. Guess we're really in it now, he whispers. I close the binder with a clap that sounds almost like a gavel. The envelope arrives like a small verdict, heavy paper green bar across the top, certified mail stamped in red so nobody can pretend it's friendly. It thumps the doormat hard enough that Dad looks up from the kitchen table as if the house sighed. I slit it with a butter knife. Notice of intent to record. Leon, I read. The words feel like gravel in my mouth. Dad rubs the bridge of his nose. They're going to lean on us, Leon, I say. Different spelling, same feeling. I set the document flat palms on either side to stop the edges curling. Outside, the air has that early 2020 stillness like the neighborhood is holding its breath. When I back the car out for the meeting, Mrs. Chang across the way pretends to be fascinated by her rosemary bush. At the corner, a garage door drops mid-wave, swallowing a half-smile like a secret. Social frost forms quietly. You don't see it until the light hits it wrong. The HOA clubhouse hums with HVAC that can't decide who it wants to be. Cardboard urns of coffee sweat on a folding table. The microphone at the lectern pops when Karen tests it, pop, then wheezes back to life. Rows of metal chairs catch the fluorescent buzz and bounce it around the room until everybody is a little too loud, trying to talk softly. Dad and I take seats near the aisle. He's in his best denim and a clean hat. I ironed my shirt because being neat is a habit I can control. Karen stands at the front with her binder and the board's counsel at her elbow, a man whose tie knot looks like it could file motions by itself. Good evening, Karen says. We have a full agenda. We'll begin with safety concerns. She glances down her nose at the lectern, specifically the unsafe condition of the Avery RV. I raise a hand. Point of clarification. Unsafe based on what inspection? The attorney leans to the mic. The board has authority to determine safety issues. Based on what inspection? I repeat patient as a spreadsheet. Karen flips a page. We received multiple complaints. That constitutes sufficient basis. Dad's voice is even. Who inspected my rig? Silence rolls a steady foot across the room. A neighbor coughs. Someone adjusts their chair. The rubber foot squeals. There is no formal inspection report, the counsel says finally. The board need not generate one to act. I write that down. No inspection report. Board acts anyway. The pen leaves an indentation that shows through the page underneath. I like that. Pressure that turns into evidence. Karen clicks to a slide with text big enough to scold a billboard for closure option. A paragraph follows dense as a fence. She reads slowly, savoring the words, if an owner fails to pay assessments or fines, the association may foreclose. Whispering ripples across the rows. A woman in front touches her purse as if the paragraph could reach into it. The microphone pops again on P's like it's nervous too. Dad's jaw works. You'd take a house, he says, not asking. Only as a last resort, Karen says brightly, which is the weather report version of a threat. I breathe steam through my nose. Before the board talks about last resorts, maybe talk about first steps. You posted a notice at 11:58 p.m., called a tow at 12:01, And now we're here listening to foreclosure options while you admit there's no inspection report. That sequence is not safety. That's speed. The council's tie knot seems to tighten. Sir, the association is acting within its authority. Good, I say. Then produce the minutes of the vote authorizing immediate TOWs on site. Karen taps her binder spine like a gavel. This is not a deposition. No, I say. It's a meeting. That means we all leave with memory. I prefer mine written. A chair clanks in the back. Mark raises a careful hand. When my brother's truck stayed 2 nights, he says nobody called a tow. Karen smiles without teeth. Case by case. Which case is 78-year-old from a late appointment, Dad asks. The attorney leans in again. We won't debate hypotheticals. Dad looks down at his hat. It happened. He says so quietly I feel it more than hear it. Karen checks her watch. Let's move to the next item. The board has arranged for the RV to be returned from the yard this afternoon to avoid storage fees. She makes it sound like philanthropy. We will readdress condition at a later date. We step out into sun that makes the parking lot sparkle with heat even in winter. A flatbed rolls up and idles diesel breath, hot and sour. The driver hops down, unhooks straps with a slap like a reprimand, and the RV edges backward with a reluctant groan. People gather faster than they gather for fireworks neighbors who don't want to be seen wanting to see. The rig comes to rest at the curb, and I see at the new scrape along the passenger side a raw white line where gel coat used to be. It's not deep, but it's shameless. Hold, I call. The driver freezes, hands up. I circle with my phone, the camera shutter clicking like a metronome. I frame the scrape with the VIN with the wheel well with the tow company logo on the flatbed. I hold my breath so my hands don't shake and exhale slow so I don't say something I'll regret. Dad runs a finger an inch above the wound without touching it, as if he's blessing a scar. The line sits there stubborn and ugly, a sentence underlined in anger. Karen's heels approach on the asphalt. See, she says to no one and everyone. Unsafe. I turn, and my voice is calm enough that I believe it. Unsafe because it was mishandled in your custody. The council coughs. If you have concerns about damage, you may submit a claim to the tow yard. I will, I say. I'll also add this to our binder under harm caused by enforcement. New tab. A neighbor edges closer. That wasn't there before she whispers. Her eyes flick to Karen, then back to the scrape. I'd swear it. If you're willing to write it, I say we'd be grateful. She nods once small as a nod gets. Minnie Cliff. Dad's breath hitches. Colton, he says, the line of white reflected in his eyes. Maybe we should sell. Let it go. There it is, a little crack somewhere behind my ribs, the sound of something important fracturing in a place you can't bandage. The prop. I've been calling Freedom Vehicle in my head is now a wound I can point to with a photo, but that doesn't make the hurt elegant. I tuck the phone into my pocket like it's a tourniquet. We don't sell because someone bruised our patience, I say. We don't fight forever because someone bruised our pride, he replies. He's not wrong, which makes it worse. Karen watches us watch the scrape. If you'd complied initially, she says none of this would have been necessary. I look at the curb clock face at the HOA banner flapping on the clubhouse door at the cardboard coffee urn on the table inside that will be dumped later, warm and wasted. What's necessary, I say, is accountability. Back home, the lien notice goes into the binder. Tab 1, and the photos print smudge-free because the new ink cartridge actually fits. I slide the neighbor's whispered willingness onto a sticky note and anchor it under Tab 5 statements. The house is quiet, except for the fridge hum and the slow tick of the living room clock that used to feel friendly. Dad sits at the table, hat off both hands around a mug he's not drinking. I don't like the looks from folks, he says. I don't like being the story. I know I say. The story ends better when it's told properly. He shakes his head once, then stares at the scrape in the photo like a skeptic who wants to be wrong. I pull out my phone. The text thread with Aunt Margaret sits at the top, our last exchange still blue and gray. I type, if we file now. The dots appear 1, 2, 3 like breath returning. Her reply lands in a second. Tomorrow morning. Clerk opens at 8. I press the phone face down on the table and exhale as if that might set the binder's spine. Dad sits at the kitchen table with the RV title in his hands like it's a bird he can return to the sky if he just opens his fingers. We could sell it, he says without looking at me. End the circus. That's not the ending, I say, though. Last night I dreamed of a driveway that never fills again. Aunt Margaret's line echoes through the room like she's standing by the sink. Court's favor, evidence, not theatrics. He smooths the paper once, twice. The scrape in the photo on the counter shines white even in bad kitchen light. I'm tired, Colton. I know I say, let's be tired in a clerk's line instead of in our own throats. The county building in 2021 smells like toner and old envelopes. The floor is hard tile that turns every shoe into a metronome. A rope queue snakes past glass windows with slot openings and little signs that say next in a font that thinks it's helpful. We shuffle. People ahead whisper about tags and deeds. Someone behind us coughs into their elbow. I've stacked our binder like a short lawful skyscraper. Tab 1 notices tab 2. Receipts, tab 3. Photos, tab 4. Correspondence, tab 5. Statements, and now a blank. Tab 6, labeled court. On top sits the affidavit I drafted at 2 in the morning when the house was quiet enough to hear the fridge click into defrost. Dad leans against the wall, eyes on the floor. The overhead fluorescents hum. I dial Aunt Margaret and put her on speaker. She answers on the second ring. You at the window yet? 5 people out, I say. Good, she says, voice brisk. Pages in order. Yes. Affidavit statement includes the addendum language verbatim. Yes, I say, flipping. Quote, temporary guest vehicle, undefined. Good. Now add the phrase lack of board vote and procedural defect where you describe the midnight tow sequence. Keep it simple. Don't argue, just assert facts. I write on the margin printing like a careful child. Dad watches my pen move. I still can't believe we're suing the neighborhood, he murmurs. We're suing bad process, I say. Aunt's voice softens half a degree. Remember, she says, you're not doing theatrics. You're delivering paperwork to a system that runs on paper. That's all. The next light dings. The person in front of us glances back with the vague sympathy of someone grateful your problem is not theirs. We step to the glass. The clerk looks up over reading glasses. Her badge says S. Emerson. She has the calm of a person who has seen every form twice. Filing, she asks. Yes, I say, sliding the stack into the opening. Complaint for declaratory relief and injunction. We're contesting a homeowners association lien and related enforcement. She raises one hand, palm gentle. I don't need the song, she says. I just need the melody. She fans the pages with a practiced flick. Affidavit. Right here, I say, adding it. Exhibits, she asks. I hand over the photos, the time-stamped notice at 11:58 p.m., the tow receipt, the invoice with penalties, the scraped fiberglass close-up with the VIN in frame, and a printout of the Architectural Guidelines addendum with temporary guest vehicle circled in red. She studies the circle. Undefined. Completely, I say. She slides a stamp pad closer. You have your fee. I slide a debit card under the glass. Dad's jaw tightens. He hates paying for air. The terminal beeps. She prints a receipt and tapes it to the back of the filing with neat square tape like a geometric blessing. Aunt's voice hums on the counter. Ask her to timestamp each exhibit, she says. I relay. The clerk nods. Happy to, she says. She lines everything in a tidy grid and reaches for the heavy red seal like it's the final act of a magic trick. Minnie Cliff. The stamp thunks down deep, decisive, and when she lifts it, the paper has a circular scar that catches the light. Filed 2021. It's a sound that turns air into happening. Dad exhales like he's been holding his breath since 11:58 p.m. The clerk writes a case number across the top. The numbers look random to me and like coordinates to somewhere safer. Hearing schedule will arrive by email, she says. Could be a week or 3. 3 would be a gift, Aunt says in my speaker. Use the time. Make a clean index. I pass the phone to Dad. Say hi, I mouth. He sets it to his ear. Margaret, he says, voice gravel and gratitude. We're really doing this. We are, she says. Paper against power. Rest tonight, Jimmy. He hands the phone back and looks at the stamp again as if it might shift. That's the sound I wanted last month. Outside the parking lot, wind smells like hot dust and toner that followed us out. I tuck the filed copy into tab 6 with a reverence I usually reserve for old photographs. Dad slides the RV title back into a plastic sleeve as if it too needs protection from the air. We celebrate in our family's minimalist way vending machine coffee on a bench that pretends to be a park. The lid warps under the heat. Dad holds his cup with both hands like a communion he hasn't decided to take. What if we lose? He asks. Then we learn to live like we lost, I say. But today we filed. He nods slowly. Today we filed, he repeats, and the sentence sits better when he owns half of it. That afternoon, I scan everything again, PDFs named like Soldiers 01. Notice 02, Tau, Receipt 03, Invoice 04, Addendum, Undefined 05, Photo Scrape 06, Affidavit, Filed. I back them up to a drive older than some neighbors' kids. The house is quiet. The binder spine thunks shut, and the thunk says alive. At sunset, Dad and I walk the block. The rosemary by Mrs. Chang's does smell good, but she still pretends not to see us. Across the way, Mark raises 2 fingers in a discreet salute that counts as a parade in a place like this. Karen's mailbox flag is a proof that even presidents collect bills. We don't say the word hearing out loud, not yet. We let the desert pink get its work done on the sky. Our porch light clicks on motion trigger Faith. Inside, I lay the filed copy on the counter and place the little kitchen salt shaker on it like a paperweight that's seen things. Minnie, Cliff. My phone pings as I rinse our 2 cups. The subject line drops into the screen like a pebble into a still pond, and the ripples climb into my chest. Notice of public hearing, 3 weeks from today. I carry the phone to the table where Dad sits. I don't have to say anything. He reads my face and nods. 3 weeks, he says. I can stay tired that long. I laugh once light and unwilling. We'll aim for less. He taps the RV title in its sleeve. You know, he says it's just a vehicle. It's our vehicle, I say, and their process. Then, let's fix the one we can touch, he says, thumb on the plastic, and make the other one show its seams. We sit there a minute listening to the house breathe. The desert night slides in under the door like a quiet intention. I open the binder and add a new page labeled Jo 7 hours hearing notice in block letters anyone could read. The hearing room buzzes like a power substation. Fluorescent lights ricochet off polished wood, and the seal on the back wall watches all of us misbehave. Every chair is taken. A red tally light blinks on a local TV camera. The lens stares like it's already made up its mind. Dad sits to my right, tie from my sister's wedding hands folded as if in church. On the far table, Karen leans toward her attorney and whispers just loud enough for the nearest row to hear, "We'll crush him with precedent." The attorney straightens his stack of cases like a magician showing empty hands. The bailiff calls the room to order. Aunt Margaret takes the bench in her robe, the same woman who ate lemon bars at my table, now neutral as stone. She scans the docket voice even. Avery V. Lakeside Vista, HOA. I stand. My chair legs graze the tile. Dad's breath leaves in a measured stream. I feel the binder's weight in my hand and the scratch of the tab dividers under my thumb, our little skyline of paperwork. Appearances, the clerk prompts. Colton Avery, pro se, I say. James Avery. Dad adds owner. It sounds like a title and a plea. Karen Whitfield. Karen says into her mic, president of the association with counsel. Aunt nods, eyes moving between us without recognition. We'll keep this efficient, she says. Mr. Avery, the burden is yours. Karen's chair squeaks. Your Honor, the board. You'll have your turn, Aunt says, not unkindly. The microphone pops on the P and settles. I walk to the podium. The wood is worn where other hands have rested arguments. The toe was unauthorized, I say, and the enforcement that followed exceeded authority. My voice is steady enough to borrow. Aunt gestures. Show me. I cue the projector. The first slide fills the screen. Notice of violation, 11:58 p.m. The timestamp glows in the dim like a little red wound. Posted 2 minutes before midnight, I say. Tow called at 12:01. No prior warning within reasonable time. I click. Tow receipt, 12:14 a.m. Then the photo of the scrape along the passenger side with the VIN in frame. The room inhales as a unit. The TV camera's red light winks hungry. Karen leans into her mic. Eyesore, she says. It dragged values. It was unsafe. Unsafe based on what I ask facing the bench, but letting the question float. There is no inspection report. Her attorney clears his throat. The board's authority to determine Mr. Howard Ant says evenly, we'll get to authority. For now, the record should reflect whether an inspection report exists. He glances at his file. No formal report. I slide the architectural guidelines addendum under the document camera. The board enforces bylaw Ear 5.3, no overnight RV parking, I say. But they also published an addendum allowing a temporary guest vehicle undefined. Ambiguity favors the homeowner. We asked for minutes authorizing immediate midnight towing. No recorded vote exists. Mini Cliff. The room's murmur rises, then damps itself when the bailiff shifts his weight. Ant looks to the clerk. Mark Exhibit A. Notice? Exhibit B. Receipt? Exhibit C. Photo? Exhibit D. Addendum. Exhibit E. Minutes. She turns a page. Her voice is the same as it was over iced tea, only taller. Ms. Whitfield, your statement. Karen stands chin up, paper held like a shield. This is about standards. We enforce uniformly, she says. The RV was visible from multiple homes. It created clutter. We have complaints. She flips. The board has a duty to protect values. The tow was proper. Ant waits a heartbeat. Anything further? Only that Mr. Avery is weaponizing technicalities to avoid paying his share. Karen says heat cracking through. We all live here. We have to look at it. Across the aisle, a neighbor shifts. Another clears his throat. Dad doesn't move. Ant turns to me. Your reply briefly. Uniform enforcement isn't uniform when cases differ, I say. Neighbors parked trucks overnight with no notice. The phrase temporary guest vehicle exists. They narrowed it after the fact. And the board can't invent an inspection report it doesn't have. Ant lowers her gaze to the binder on the bench. Our binder reflected back at us by the institution that taught us to make it. Her fingers rest on the page for a quiet second. The microphones click like insects in dry grass. Upon review of Section 5.3b, she reads, and the record before the court, this tow was not authorized. The line lands in the room like a weight lifted and a gavel waiting. Karen exhales a laugh that isn't one. You can't be serious, Miss Whitfield Ant says. The court is not a comment thread. Sit. Her attorney squeezes her elbow. She sits. I swallow. We request restitution for towing and damage, I say, and a preliminary injunction to prevent further collection or lien activity while this is resolved. Ant considers. Restitution is appropriate. As to equitable relief, she turns to the clerk. Make a note of proposed terms. She faces the HOA table. Counsel, can the association satisfy damages promptly? He hedges. We will confer. Dad leans close. Whisper low. Ask for what you said you'd ask. My mouth is dry. The words feel big. One more motion. Your Honor, I say. Given the pattern of aggressive enforcement and the association's ability to expend funds while this is pending, we move to freeze HOA assets until damages are settled. The attorney is up before the words finish, objecting with both hands. That's extraordinary. It harms innocent operations. Ant raises a palm. It is extraordinary, she says. It is also sometimes necessary. The court weighs equities. She turns to me. Mr. Avery's scope frees discretionary funds, I say. Leave ordinary maintenance and payroll unfettered. Require board approval filed with the clerk for any expenditure over a threshold until restitution is complete. The courtroom has its own weather for a moment, cooler, drier, brittle as new ice. The red camera light blinks once as if even it holds its breath. Ant writes slow and precise. Then she looks up. Motion to freeze discretionary assets is granted in part as stated. The association will not expend beyond ordinary maintenance and payroll without notice to this court until restitution is paid. Mini Cliff. The gavel taps once crisp. HOA assets are hereby frozen. The sound hits bone. Gasps ripple like wind through dry grass. Someone in the third row murmurs, "Finally." Dad's shoulders drop a fraction, then square again like a man who remembers he's allowed to stand straight. Karen half rises. This is... She searches for a word. Her chair skitters back. Bias, Ms. Whitfield. Ant says, you are out of order. Karen points at me as if pointing settles anything. He's weaponizing loopholes. Sit, Ant says, firmer. Karen doesn't. She keeps talking accusations, predictions, the word precedent warped into a threat. The bailiff moves to her side with the calm of a man who opens doors for a living, not arguments. Ma'am, he says low, let's step outside. Her stilettos click, click, click like a metronome, sending everyone home. Ant stacks papers. Restitution terms will be in the written order. Parties will receive copies by end of week. She glances over the room without landing anywhere. This court is adjourned. The gavel falls. The buzz returns in a different key, whispers, phones a tissue crinkling. I look at Dad. He looks at me. Neither of us says victory. We say nothing and let the sound of it work on our faces. The red light on the camera goes dark. Outside, the hall smells like paper and hand sanitizer. Mark finds us near the elevator. About time, he says. I'll write that statement proper. Thank you, I say. He nods toward the courtroom doors. She's furious. I noticed, I say. The doors swing open and Karen passes with the bailiff, her heels furious on the tile. For a beat, her eyes catch mine hot and glassy. Then she's gone down the corridor, the click-click fading like a warning that already failed. Dad tucks the filed copy into the binder and pats it like a shoulder. We're not done, he says. No, I say, but we're not nowhere. The envelope is cheap stock. No return address, the kind of paper that creases when you look at it. It slides under our door and catches on the rug like it wants to be noticed. I pick it up with 2 fingers, feeling the sand grit that sneaks inside no matter how often you sweep. Special election. Notice in block letters the kind a printer offers before asking if you're sure. 3 seats vacant. A meeting date circled in blue. Somewhere between the courthouse gavel and this rectangle of paper, the weather changed. Dad reads over my shoulder, his breath warm with coffee. Looks like Karen's empire is crumbling, he says, not gloating so much as relieved to be speaking English again. In the garage, 2023 arrives as light. It pours through the open door and lays a clean stripe across the concrete. The RV looks larger in this honest brightness canvas of need and stubbornness. It smells like primer and washing soap. On the workbench, I've set out sandpaper blue tape, 2 brushes, and a quart can that claims to match the gel coat like a lie trying to be a hope. Aunt Margaret shows up in jeans and a chambray shirt, no robe, no bench. She carries a yellow legal pad and lemon bars in a mismatched tin. I brought sugar, she says, then taps the pad. And vegetables. Consent, decree vegetables, I ask. Fiber, she says. Keeps things moving. We clear a space on the folding table. She writes, consent decree across the top in a handwriting that looks like courthouse architecture, all straight lines and no frills. Refund language first, she says, uncapping her pen. It needs to read like a clock. 100% of towing and administrative fees, I say, within 30 days of order. She writes it down. And interest if late, she adds. 2% monthly until paid. She looks up. You don't ask for blood. You ask for time and arithmetic. Dad is already wiping the passenger side with a microfiber cloth motion, small and patient. The scrape has been sanded feather soft. If you close an eye, you can pretend it was always this way. Feels like we're erasing a sentence, he says. Replacing it with a better one, I say. Neighbors drift in with the desert air. Mark appears with a bag of burger buns and a cautious grin. Mrs. Chang brings a tray of sliced tomatoes and, after a beat, a small jar of the rosemary she's been so fascinated by. People stall at the garage threshold like it's a stage and they're waiting for cue. Then they step over and pick up what's nearest a brush, a rag, a paper plate. The garage becomes a studio and a potluck at once. I can help tape, Mark offers. Edges, I say, handing him the blue roll. He tears it with the practiced rip of someone who's mended more than he admits. The tape whispers along the trim line, clean and true. Aunt keeps writing between bites of lemon bar. No admissions board training. Clarified definition of temporary guest vehicle, defined at last as a passenger car or any vehicle belonging to a visiting guest for up to 72 hours. She underlines 72. It's generous, she says, and simple. Simple is hard to misread. From the mouth of the garage, 2 teenagers, our cousins, argue about ketchup in hushed tones like repeating last year's joke makes the house remember it's allowed to laugh. The smell of fresh paint cuts through the burger smoke, sharp and hopeful. Dad leans over his patch with a steady hand, and I watch the new coat lay down and shine before it dries to the exact right kind of dull. Think we're getting the old thing back? He asks. We're getting the idea back, I say. The miles come later. Mrs. Chang edges closer to the table where Aunt is reading the draft aloud like lyrics. Refunds in 30 days. Aunt says, checking her pen marks. Notice of corrected definitions with mailing to all owners. Board to adopt due process timelines longer than the time it takes to find flip-flops. Mrs. Chang coughs a laugh into her wrist. About time, she says, and signs the informal copy as a witness with deliberate strokes. Her rosemary smells like apology. I print the draft on the inkjet that lives in the pantry between paper towels and bulk rice. The pages slide out hot and sure. Aunt reads again, this time more quietly, as if the words can bruise if you say them wrong. Will they fight this, I ask. People fight losing more than they fight wrong, she says. But the board's new. They'll want to start with clean hands. Dad turns his brush in the can, the bristles releasing thin strings of white that look like late snow. His hand rests on the freshly painted RV and stays there flat and warm. His eyes go damp without fanfare. I took your mother to Santa Fe, in this thing he says. Voice not sad so much as almost grateful. We ate green chile that made us both cry. She called it a sacrament. I know I say. We stand like that for a moment, hand paint stories, until a fly decides to investigate and Dad laughs it away. Aunt tears the lemon bar tin into squares of foil, makes them into a tower, and sets it down like a witness stack. Tomorrow, she says, tapping the decree we file this as stipulated. The judge will bless it if everyone signs. Blessings are just documents with stamps. I nod and add a bright tab to tab 6 in the binder, the one that grew new arms in the last 2 years, court orders decrees. The spine creaks like an old friend sitting down. Outside, kids on scooters flip around in the cul-de-sac with the freedom that comes when adults stop arguing and start measuring things. The neighborhood is not fixed. It's just less sick. We grill. The burgers spit fat that hisses when it hits the grill bars. Someone brings pickles. Someone says they're sorry without saying they're sorry, their voice sliding past the place that would hold the word. I let it be enough. Board training. Aunt repeats, making a new line. Open meetings, real minutes definitions up front. She glances at me. You'll keep them honest by being boring. It's my gift, I say. Near dusk, the light tips gold in the garage and turns the RV into a loyal animal. We peel the blue tape slowly, the line it leaves a quiet triumph. Dad tests the surface with the back of his knuckles the way his father taught him, and he nods once like a man accepting a verdict that finally makes sense. The doorbell rings as we're wrapping brushes in plastic. Another envelope waits on the matte, thicker stock this time, and the seal is embossed like it expects to be framed. HOA Community. Apology, ceremony attendance requested. The type is formal without being stiff. The time is Saturday, late afternoon. The location is the small park where the string lights make everyone look forgiven. Dad taps the words with his forefinger, smiling with his mouth closed, a habit he has when something good surprises him. Didn't think I'd see that day, he says. Tomorrow, we file the consent, Aunt says. She takes the envelope, tilts it under the garage light, and nods once. Then we let their words do the rest. In the garage, the paint smell fades to the background note of a project finished enough to be proud of. I slide the special election notice and the apology ceremony invitation into Clear Sleeves tab 7 Community, and the binder gains another small weight that makes its heft feel right in my hand. Out in the street, someone laughs in a way that doesn't ask permission. The RV catches the last stripe of sun across its side unbroken. The subject line is chirpy enough to be smug. Let's protect our property values. Eyesore enforcement has begun. Karen has CC'd the board and BCC'd the block, judging by how fast my phone lights up with replies. I skim on the couch while Dad sits across from me at the dining table, his reading glasses folded on the placemat like a truce flag we never agreed to. She went with eyesore. Huh, I say. Dad lifts a shoulder. Could have been public menace. That one's got more flair. Careful, I say. She'll add it to the minutes. He tries a smile and misses. The living room has turned into a document pit overnight, banker boxes on the rug, yellow tabs colonizing everything I've printed. The winter light in Phoenix is thin, like it's been filtered through chalk. On the TV, the HOA portal login page sits open. Login failed twice because the password reset link is older than the internet. Temporary guest vehicle? I mutter. Dad blinks. What? At the block party last spring, I say. Somebody mentioned the rules had an exception. I flagged it and then, life. I click through the architectural guidelines addendum. There it is, in black and PDF, temporary guest vehicle, no definition attached. It's a ghost clause. My pen taps the table. If it isn't defined, it isn't enforceable the way they want. English, please, Dad says. It means words matter, I say. And I'm not paying $200 to teach them that. He picks up his glasses and sets them down again. Make it an even 1,000, and we call it a senior discount. We'll call it 0, I say. The clubhouse smells like floor cleaner and burned coffee. Fluorescent lights buzz like nervous bees. Rows of metal folding chairs scrape and clatter as neighbors file in, whispering into sleeves. A poster board on an easel reads Community Standards Night in bubble letters that would be cute if they weren't loaded. Karen stands at the front with a binder and a clicker. Good evening, she says into a microphone that pops on peas. Before we begin, a reminder, this is a meeting of the association. Civility is expected. A polite cough rises and falls. I take a seat 2 rows back where I can see the projector screen and Karen's hands. Dad sits on my right, posture stiff, hat in his lap like contrition. We'll start with Bylaw Section 5.3. Karen announces. The slide snaps forward. No overnight parking of recreational vehicles. The words are centered and large enough to shame a billboard. Uniform enforcement, she says. No exceptions. I raise my hand. Point of order, I say, because auditors don't come to meetings without a script. The Architectural Guidelines Addendum references a temporary guest vehicle exception. There's no definition. Could you explain how you're interpreting that? A few heads turn. One neighbor, Mark, from 3 doors down, gives me the quick half nod that says I'm not alone. Karen's smile is thin. The board has consistently interpreted temporary guest vehicle to mean a passenger car belonging to a visiting guest. So, not vehicle, then, I say, a subset of vehicles. It's common sense, she says. Common sense isn't common law, I say. If you mean passenger car, why doesn't it say passenger car? Her jaw tightens. She clicks to a slide full of bullet points. Eyesore enforcement protecting values. Terminology. Aside, the community expects clean lines and no clutter. Recreational vehicles present a cluttered aesthetic. Aesthetic, Dad says under his breath. That rig's cleaner than my driveway. Karen continues. We have a duty to protect the visual harmony of the block. A question mark says from the aisle. If a guest stays the weekend, is their truck a temporary guest vehicle or an eyesore? Karen draws herself up. Trucks are evaluated case by case. So is a 78-year-old coming home late from the doctor a case I ask. Because what happened didn't look like evaluation. It looked like a stopwatch. We posted a notice of violation at 11:58 p.m. Karen says, and called it 12:01. Timely, as the bylaws allow. Do the bylaws allow? 3 minutes, I ask. As in, does any homeowner think 3 minutes is a fair warning? We're not here to debate feelings, Karen says. We're here to uphold standards. A man 2 rows up whispers, Standards for who? His spouse shushes him. Next slide, Karen says, and a photo of our cul-de-sac fills the screen. Our driveway, empty, the palm tree still wind chimes blurring. This is what neighbors woke up to. Clean. Peaceful. Because you removed the thing you didn't like, I say. It's peaceful after a theft, too. Language, she warns. Fine, I say. After an aggressive tow, she picks up a sheet from the lectern with dramatic neatness. Mr. Avery, she says, addressing Dad per association policy, here is your invoice towing plus administrative fee. Please remit within 10 days to avoid late penalties. Dad takes the paper like it might crack. The corners crease under his thumbs. His eyes find the total and stop there. His breath goes high and thin. Read it out, he says softly to me. 1,200, I say. Plus 50, if not paid within 10 days. He folds along the total, then along it again like he can make the number smaller by making the paper neat. I lift a hand again. One more point. The addendum clause, temporary guest vehicle, has no definition. In contract interpretation, ambiguity is read in favor of the less powerful party, the homeowner. If you intend to exclude RVs, then your language needs to say so. Karen's microphone pops. This is not a courtroom. No, I say. It's a neighborhood. She leans toward the mic. Your RV, she says, and the word travels across the tile is junkyard flare. A sharp breath pulls in from somewhere behind us. Mark winces. I feel my phone already in my hand before I decide to lift it. The memo app opens. I press record. Karen's eyes flick to my screen and away again as if I'm a gnat. A woman in the front row raises a tentative hand. We bring our son's camper on holidays, she says. 2 nights max. Is that an eyesore case by case? Karen says. But campers are not passenger cars, so they are not temporary guest vehicles. Then what I ask is a temporary guest vehicle. Use your judgment, she says. That's what we did, I say. The fluorescent lights hum louder, or maybe my head does. The microphone cord makes a little click against the lectern wood as Karen shifts. The room's temperature is the same as outside, but feels drier, brittle. Someone scribbles in ballpoint. The pen scratch sounds like a match on a rough strip. Karen scans the room for a sympathetic face and finds a few. We'll move to board updates, she says. Enforcement is not personal. Dad tips his hat forward a millimeter. Feels personal, he whispers. I put my hand on the top of his hat and push it back enough that I can see his eyes. "We're fine," I say. "You keep saying that," he mutters. "And I will, I say. Minnie Cliff." Karen brings the meeting down with a practiced slap of paper on wood. "We're adjourned," she says, and the sentence empties the air as efficiently as the tow emptied our driveway. Neighbors stand with chair-scrape applause, some looking at us, some pointedly not. In the shuffle, Mark touches my elbow and leans in. "Temporary guest," he says low. "When my brother visited, they didn't say a word." "Did you park overnight?" I ask. He nods. "2 nights. No notice." "Thank you," I say. "Would you be willing to write a statement?" He hesitates, then shrugs. "I'll think about it." Karen passes us without looking. The microphone gives one last pop as someone kills the power. The coffee urn exhales its burnt last breath. Back home, I clear a corner of the wall above the desk and pin a piece of foam board cheap cork imitation. At the top, in block letters, "Ambiguities that save us." I print the architectural guidelines addendum and draw a fat red circle around the ghost word's temporary guest vehicle. Dad stands at my shoulder, the invoice tucked folded twice now in his shirt pocket like a talisman that burns. "What do we do?" he asks. "We let their words help us," I say. I push a bright pin through the circle. It bites the cork with a satisfying resistance. And we don't pay for the privilege. The string lights still glow faintly over the park, and the scent of cooled barbecue lingers as the RV freshly painted rests like a trusted companion returned. In that ceremony, with neighbors clapping and apologies spoken aloud, I felt the weight of years ease off our shoulders. The lesson wasn't about winning. It was about repairing what had been cracked, holding institutions accountable, and discovering that healing begins when people stand together. Justice isn't loud, it's steady.